All right, so today we are diving deep into the world of Indian cinema,
Ooh, exciting.
and specifically the career of the one and only Shankar. We've gotten some articles from you, actually, about Shankar's upcoming projects.
Ugh.
Well, let's just say there's some drama brewing.
Yeah, and it's not just like your everyday drama, we're talking like full-blown copyright claim, which you don't see every day, especially from someone like Shankar, who's, top of his game.
For sure. And, for those maybe who aren't as familiar with Shankar's work, I mean, Indian 2 just came out, which is huge in and of itself. But he's already making headlines for what he's got planned next. And on top of that, he's calling out other filmmakers.
Right, and that's where these articles come in. So Shankar is saying that somebody's been lifting scenes from a Tamil novel that he actually has the copyright to. It's called Veerayuga Nayagan Velpari. And he even went on Twitter about it, which, again, for somebody at his level to be using Twitter as, like, the way to address this, it's pretty unusual. Usually these things are handled, behind the scenes.
So he basically threw down the gauntlet on Twitter. No wonder everyone is talking about it.
Exactly. And just to add fuel to the fire, he specifically calls out a recent movie trailer in his tweet, which of course sent fans into a frenzy trying to figure out, like, who is he talking about?
So who are the main suspects? I mean, two names that I saw popping up were Junior NTR's Devara and then also Suriya's Kanguva.
You got it. And it's really interesting when you think about it because the timing of when a trailer comes out, it's not just a marketing thing. It often reveals important plot points. So for Shankar Sak to come out now, just as Devara's trailer dropped, you can see why people are putting two and two together.
Yeah, it definitely raises some eyebrows. Makes you wonder. Okay, so we've got a potential cinematic crime on our hands. But to, solve it, we need, evidence. And more specifically, this novel that everyone's talking about, Veerayuga Nayagan Velpari. So what's the deal with this book?
Well, from what I've gathered, it's a sprawling historical epic set in ancient Tamil Nadu. We're talking ancient triads, legendary heroes, mysterious wars, just all the ingredients for an epic saga. And it centers around this ruler Parivalal of this kingdom called Parambu.
Parambu. That sounds familiar.
Yeah. So Parambu is interesting because it was this small, kind of seemingly insignificant nation, but it attracted the attention and wrath of all three major Tamil dynasties, the Cherastolas and Pandyas.
Oh, wow. All three at once.
Yeah.
That's like a big target on your back.
Yeah.
This Parivalal must have been quite the character.
Yeah. He's described as a brilliant strategist, a charismatic leader. A bit of an enigma, really. Think like a King Arthur, maybe with a dash of Genghis Khan, but obviously in a completely different historical setting.
Okay, now I'm picturing it. That's an interesting combination. It makes you wonder, why target this small kingdom? What made Parambu and Parivalal such a threat?
Well, and that's one of the central mysteries that the novel explores. Was it Porabu's strategic location, some kind of hidden treasure? Or was it Parivalal himself and the ideas he represented? The novel really dives deep into these questions, exploring themes of power, ambition, betrayal, and the often brutal realities of ancient warfare.
I'm really intrigued. I need to get my hands on a copy of this book.
Exactly. And you have to remember, Shankar's not just interested in, adapting this novel. He's planning an entire trilogy. So that tells you something about the scope of the story and his ambition to really bring it to life.
Wow, a trilogy. Okay, so that implies another level. Even Ponniyin Selvan was only 2 parts.
Yeah, it makes you think even more about, world building and character development. And just what Shankar's vision for this is going to be.
Totally. Is there anything in the articles about why he was drawn to this particular story?
They don't really give specifics, but you can kind of speculate. Shankar's really good at taking these grand historical epics and making them relevant to a modern audience. He's not just interested in recreating the past. He wants to find those timeless themes that these stories embody.
That's true. It's not just about the swords and sandals. It's about the drama and the intrigue, that human element at the heart of it all.
Precisely. And I think that's what makes this potential adaptation so interesting.
All right, so we've got this potential blockbuster trilogy in the works, a copyright controversy, this mysterious historical epic at the center of it all. But let's bring it back to you, our listener, for a second. You're clearly invested in Shankar's career and Indian cinema in general. So why does all of this matter?
Well, I think that's the key question, right? This isn't just about, one director or one novel or even one film industry. It really speaks to a larger issue, especially in today's globalized world. How do we balance creative expression with protecting intellectual property?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It is.
Because on one hand, you have someone like Shankar, who's obviously drawn to this story.
Yeah.
and wants to share his vision.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, he does have the right to protect his work.
Yeah.
And make sure it's not being used without his permission.
Exactly. And I think a lot of times it's not black and white. There's a lot of gray area where inspiration might turn into imitation. And it can be hard to find the line sometimes. And I think that's what makes this whole thing really interesting.
For sure. So how do we even begin to navigate that gray area? Like, as viewers, how do we even determine if something is a legitimate homage versus like straight up plagiarism?
Well, that's where like critical thinking comes in. You have to pay attention to the details. Ask yourself, are there specific scenes, characters, plot points that feel like they're directly lifted from the original? Or are the similarities more like thematic? Like maybe it's more about the essence of a certain time period or genre.
So it's about being like a more active viewer.
Yeah.
And engaging in the creative process instead of just passively watching.
Yeah, and I think in a way that's what Shankar is trying to do. By putting this statement out there, it's not just about calling out this potential infringement, but it's starting a conversation about originality and inspiration and the responsibilities that come with adapting existing works.
It's almost as if he's saying like, hey, like, let's all be a little bit more aware of where inspiration comes from.
Exactly.
And how we use it.
And I would say, if our listeners are interested in learning more about this, the novel Veerayuga Nayagan Velpari is a great place to start because it's so steeped in history and culture and mythology that it'll be really interesting to see how Shankar adapts it for a modern audience. If this trilogy does end up happening.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think one thing's for sure, whether it's, this other film we've been talking about or his Veerayuga Nayagan Velpari adaptation, we're going to be watching very closely. We'll be looking for echoes of the novel, thinking about that line between inspiration and imitation. And for you, our listener, keep those questions coming. Keep diving deep. And most importantly, keep those insightful articles coming our way.